It's Sports by the Book. We're here at the South Point studio, and we've got a jam-packed show. We're going to take a look at all the AFC NFC Championship recaps you can handle. A look 2 weeks ahead to the big game. Lou Finocchiaro joins us at 3:30 to talk football, hockey, and more. And right off the bat, myself, Matt Nevert, my co-host Alex White, we've got some guests. The highly esteemed part of the crew that makes the lines here at the South Point. We're joined right off the top of the show by the men, the myth, the legends.
Wow.
Vinny Magliulo and Jimmy Vaccaro. We're getting ready to talk everything that happened last weekend, everything that's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. And before we get into the specifics, because we got plenty to go over, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts from a general perspective. Here we are the day after the conference championship games. You've got a full menu, pages and pages long, of bets that you can already make on the Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. Just in general, would love to get your guys' thoughts on how the landscape of betting the Super Bowl has changed and how quickly things are available nowadays.
Well, Jimmy, first of all, we get called a lot of things. Esteemed is definitely on the short list, but so thank you, Matt, for that. But Jimmy, you'll remember that there was a time. Oh my goodness! Even if you go back to the mid '80s, where maybe there were a dozen ways to bet the Super Bowl. Of course, we remember when you could bet the game and the total, and then at halftime. And then maybe somebody started sprinkling in money lines. But, that Bears Super Bowl 20, with William the Refrigerator Perry scoring that touchdown, really had a light bulb go off and started to really get the attention of not only the betting public, but also operators as well, Matt and Alex. So, It just continues to grow every year, and now the Super Bowl, just with the end game alone, you look at it and you say, "My goodness," because was it really so long ago where we only had a few ways to bet the game, and the end game at that time consisted of halftime. So Jimmy can speak to a lot of those points as well. He was right in the middle of it too.
Yeah, tell Taylor to sit down. He doesn't need to get up.
You're not a Swiftie?
Yeah, I just won about 4 albums.
Yeah. Probably ran you about as much as these tickets
But
that we're about to show.
I got confused. I thought it was Little Richard's song. Taylor.
One thing that hasn't changed.
You can't stand it, can you? You're laughing at me.
I'm a mixed bag. I'm not a hater. I'm not a lover, in her words, either. But one thing that hasn't necessarily changed is the scale of some of these Super Bowl bets, because people have always unloaded for way more on the Super Bowl, and that has not changed. You got a couple of big tickets right here for us.
Well, it's an event also, and first of all, the thing that Vinny went on to is that he's right on the money, because obviously there are different things, different times, whatever. The William Perry thing was like the best $1 million we ever paid for advertisement, because what had happened when it happened, naturally, all of a sudden, every AP ticket writer from whatever from across the country started calling people like me and Vinny, say, "Hey, what we hear? What you hear? What happened with William Perry?" And then what it did. With not being the one, going to the end zone we thought, but then the one we needed not to go into the end zone ended up to be our biggest winner. That was William Perry. From that particular point, every year what had happened, every APA reader would call and say, "Hey, Vinny, hey, Jimmy, anything going on? So we would have their attention all of a sudden. So it went crazy after that particular time. And we're going to have a monster 2 weeks from yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And here's 3 tickets now that we probably wouldn't have gotten in years past. They'd have waited probably to see what happens in a few days.
Yeah, take a look at these. My God.
Same thing. All right. The first one I'm looking at is just a lowly lay 105, which you can now, which is unbelievable. We have laying 105 at our sports books here in Nevada at the South Point. He laid a measly $21,000 minus 05 to win $20,000. Naturally, that's a few dollars cheaper if he had to lay 10. Or lay $1.10. Okay, that was the first one. Here's the second one. The guy bet $57,000 on the money line, minus $1.14, $57,000 to win $50,000. All right, that's another. We're up to a couple tickets already. And here's a little mama and pop. It would straighten your behind up if you were watching the game. 49ers minus 105, $105,000 to win $100,000.
That's all.
Now, not saying that we never got those type of bets previously, but what's happening now with these type of tickets that are coming in earlier and earlier, which shows you that the weekend is going to be an absolute monster. So what we have given is what the public wants. we put this in our little Twitter, me and Vinny. The response we get is incredible because people keep saying, wow, Jimmy, send me some big tickets. We want to see this.
Mm-hmm.
What they do, they seem to like get their friends on the phone or whatever. Say, hey, did you see this? See this. Michael Glenn, the owner of the South Point, loves it because let's just call it like it is. Win, lose, or draw. We have people all over the world who's calling and we're saying, welcome to the South Point, see what's going on. So it costs zero. But, he had the nerve to do it for the 105. So with me, Vinny, and Chris, I would consider a lot more of these the beginning of next week. So we'll see what happens. But this is incredible early on.
A couple of things to Jimmy's really concise and accurate assessment there is that you've got almost $200,000 worth of tickets there. That's not 1% of what we're going to handle on this game. So think about that for a couple of weeks. The other part is the 105 to win 100. It's $5,000 off. Now, obviously, he's got to win the ticket. Don't get me wrong, but instead of putting up 110 to win 100, put up 105 to win 100. 105 has become a standard here at the South Point during the Super Bowl for straight bets on the side on the game itself, and also during the NCAA tournament from the second weekend in, from Sweet 16 in. So people know that, and that accelerates and adds to wagering because people know that, and they're educated enough now too, compared to years past, where they are willing to shop for that extra, in this case, 5 cents. But as you're betting during the course of this Super Bowl, you're going to save money. And this individual, I can tell you right now, he's not done betting. This is not. Those are. He's still gonna. He's gonna come back.
Getting in ahead of a number move.
But he's going to be back.
Yeah.
I did see him. He was at the counter, and I just said, you're invited to come in and talk about it. He said, no, thanks, Jimmy. He said, maybe one of these days we will. But, you got to respect that. And before we forget, I just want to, because I get questioned about this a lot, and I'm sure Vinny does also. It's like, Jimmy, is that the biggest event you have? Answer is always the same. The Thursday to Sunday with the NCAA might do it, but that's 4 days.
Yeah.
This is just one event, one day. But the March Madness, too, is incredible because it's like nonstop people coming in for the 4 days. So this great little sports book we have here, which was built, can you believe it's going on 7 years ago, Vincenz, with this studio here?
This studio, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we enjoy it. So anytime anybody out there wants anything answered or whatever, stop by and see me and Vinny, and we'll go from there. But I feel really good about this stuff because like a lot of us here, at 78 years old, I made just about all of them. Now, I lost the first one. I was in Youngstown, Ohio, and I bet against Lombardi and had to look around for gas money after that. See, one thing you two wouldn't know because, well, it was like, how the hell did I do that? I got no gas and no money, but I figured something out.
You always do, Jimmy. That's what we love about you guys.
Alex.
I do have one question for you guys. So it did cross my mind. I thought that this might swing, and the Chiefs may be a favorite at some point, maybe 1 point favorite. I know it's pretty much pick 'em now, but that right there shows me that there's going to be money here on the Niners as well. Do you think we won't see that complete swing?
That's a great question, Alex, because if you remember, going into the weekend here at South Point, Chris and Chris and I were in on Friday. We were talking about the matchups and the potential matchups, and the look ahead on that the Chiefs Niners was 3. Niners 3, if you remember. Now you locked it in at that if you had bet that particular look ahead proposition. But I also said, listen, here's what you have to remember. Let's see how the games play out on Sunday, which obviously yesterday, we did see that. Chris did open the number last night at 2. So some Chiefs money at 2. At the 1.5. Now back to 1.5. By the way, that once these bets came in, back to 1.5.
That amount will definitely do it.
Yeah,
at least this early.
It's still early. Yeah, that's a good point, Matt. So but to your point, Alex, would it shock me if there was a swing the other way? I don't think so because what you've got here are two very public teams, not only with their fan bases in their respective cities and states, but also nationally. These are very much public teams, as we refer to them as, and everybody who gets involved with it. And as Jimmy was saying, and Matt, you were asking about how big the Super Bowl is, the single most wagered event of the year that we see every year. Now, for sustained action, obviously the NCAA tournament for 2.5 weeks
nothing
will
compares.
surpass it. But for a single event, a single game, there's nothing like the Super Bowl. I mean, last year, over $153 million bet in Nevada alone, and now obviously with now the gaming and sports wagering available in well over 40 states, that's certainly going to be on a national scale.
And what we also might see is, okay, obviously this is a lot of money, no matter how you cut it up here. But come game time, we might need this guy to win the money. I
Sure.
mean, that's how crazy it is. And every time people say, hey, Jimmy, who do you need? And I try to explain it in a nice way that, like, when you have an event like this, you could be 200,000 high a half hour before games, but when they kick off, you need the other side because what you'll get, let's call them like the people who understand the racket who bet a lot of money. They're waiting till they see what they can get. If they're not betting it, that means that they know that they can get this sooner or later. They're waiting for something a little better. So there's nothing wrong with it. And with the casinos and the sports book, there's a lot of moving around. So if you have someone obviously moving money for you, so you have to wait till the end if you want something like this. So it's going to be fun, and I can't wait. I enjoy it quite a bit.
I'm sorry, man. We started putting up prop bets already, because it's such a lengthy process. First, second, third, fourth quarter. To start, right? And some of the standard, team total props and things like that. So every day gearing up towards next weekend because we want to grab next weekend as a big weekend too with folks visiting town that may not be here for the following weekend. And of course, the following weekend will be with probably over 400,000 of our closest friends, especially with the game here. But Super Bowl for next year is up already. The future book is up already here at the South Point.
You guys never sleep, do you?
No, it's what for? Well, we do this. I'm sleeping right now. You probably can't even tell. I just hope I don't snore in the middle of the
We'll
show.
definitely highlight some of those because there's a historical trend that we're going to take a look at as far as look ahead preseason Super Bowl favorites. Last thing for you guys before we let you guys get back behind the counter, get back to pretending to work here. Was there a game yesterday? We'll end by looking back. Yesterday with the Chiefs and the Ravens, Lions, 49ers. Was there a game that you guys did better on between the two of those?
I would say last night's game fell actually perfect in terms, for the house. Obviously, a lot of people did have the Lions to cover, but they also had them on the money line as well. So when you look at the carryover, particularly from the morning game, I would say, Jimmy, that the Niners game last night, the result of it, So it was a good result. And again, these futures you're going to see not such. One of the questions you'll come across or will get asked a lot. Hey, how could this so and so be only this? They're short because again, we're going to see how free agency goes, how the draft goes, and not so much who they draft as much as who maybe makes some moves around the draft in terms of cluster draft picks or cluster or trades that involve.
Somebody trades up for a Caleb Williams and one unexpected.
There you go. Things like that.
Can't handicap that number yet.
But in case you're looking at somebody, now you can get started for next year's Super Bowl.
And one of these things quickly that a lot of people ask, and I'll just say it out front, we're up to half the money that we take are on prop bets. You got to remember, from prop bets was zero. Now it's half the stuff that we take for that. That's an incredible number.
That is.
And so you just go on and you just keep writing tickets for as fast as you can because it is something. And the other thing, the NFL, there are a lot of props that like we can't pay until the NFL sends out their official sheet. Because we may see it's like 112 yards and then it comes across, we counted the last two, now it's 115, 116. So everybody out there, kids, every now and then, if you come to cash your tickets and we're not ready yet, it's not us. The NFL must say you an official sheet, and Vincenzo will help me with that.
Got to go by the official box score, and remember this. This is the first one to make it maybe definitely clarify. When somebody takes a knee, especially a quarterback takes a knee, that comes off as yardage. Please bear that in mind. He had 100 yards. No, he really didn't. He did. But he did take a knee 3 times in a row, so he lost yardage. So,
well, Vinny Maiulo, Jimmy Vaccaro, thanks so much for stopping by. We'll let you guys get back to work, but always love getting your perspective.
Don't say that word around me.
we know where they're heading. Well, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you
Good
guys
to be with
joining
you
us
both.
here to start. There they go. Vinny and Jimmy, come down and see them at the South Point, and come get your prop bets in. That half number of the props in terms of the total action. I knew it was a lot. I don't necessarily know if I knew that it was half. Of course, yeah. With some of the tickets.
I know, honestly. I didn't know that either.
No, I mean, I used to work at a sports book, and we took a lot of bets, or a lot of props, I should say, during the Super Bowl and leading up to the Super Bowl. And Vinny's right, though, that the money that is put up here at the beginning of this 2-week now, parade to the Super Bowl, it only builds.
Right.
And that Thursday through Saturday before it, and even right up until kickoff, that's when they take a lot of the handle.
It is crazy, Matt. But I mean, thinking about it, even for myself the last few weeks, I feel like I have been betting more on props than even the games because they are really hard, especially this late in the season. The line is so tight that they do a great job. So beating them behind there, it's almost like you feel like you have a little bit more of an edge with some of these props if you do your research and feel good about one of them. So I could kind of see why.
Well, let's dive into recapping the 2 conference championship games. How did you make out, first and foremost? What bets did you have, if you want to share them, and how did you make out on the weekend overall? I only had 3. How many did you make?
Well,
total?
so here's the thing. I think I've told most people in most shows. So I had an exacta. I had the Niners beating the Ravens 18-1. I made it the day after Halloween. So that one kind of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of doubling down, because I like the Ravens, we talked about it last week, I actually made a bet on the Chiefs to cover myself there. I also had a really good teaser with the Chiefs up, and I brought the Niners down, which you could have done either way. Like, could have teased the Lions up as well. But so those two, but I did lay the points with the Niners. You were on the other side. You got me on that one. But overall,
I wasn't
good.
alone.
Yeah.
There was a lot of folks that laid the 7.5 even it got up to. And it was on Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it, when that game was getting down to the nitty gritty, and everyone was so sure on either side. They're like, we all know how this one ends, and you didn't know what they were talking about necessarily because they were coming from different sides of the aisle, but had the same thing. But yeah, real quick, I want to get into this Chiefs Ravens matchup, 17-10 final. The game closed Ravens laying 4.5. The total at 44. My only bets for the weekend, I had under in this one, which was easy money, no sweat there. I had the Lions plus the 7, which was not easy. The exact opposite. They had to wiggle their way in the back door there. And then I took that Gus Edwards over 39.5 rushing yards prop. And, Gus Edwards aside, he finished with 20 yards. So I lost that one as my only loser out of the 3. Just
not
a
too
surprising game plan overall from the Ravens. The NFL's number 1 offense in terms of rushing percentage. They ran the ball over half the time in the regular season, the highest rate of anybody in the league. They had exactly 11 running plays, 6 designed runs to running backs. And it was aided because they got down early. They gave up that touchdown early, but they went so drastically far away from their game plan. And we'll hear from Lou Finicaro here coming up in about 10 minutes with his thoughts, because he was all over the Ravens in a bad way. He was crushing them on social media. And I just thought that the departure from their game plan from so early on in the game doomed them from early on in that first quarter.
I completely agree. I mean, they weren't down that much that they needed to panic like that. Of course, there was 2 big plays that really changed the whole momentum of the game. I think if Flowers wouldn't have fumbled that ball in the end zone, that might have switched things around there. But you got to give it up for their defense. I mean, they gave them chance after chance to come back here, but I'm with you. I wish they would have not abandoned the run and stuck to that a little bit more, but it did feel like a little bit of a panic, didn't it?
Absolutely, and especially against the Chiefs defense that gave up 182 rush yards against Houston the week prior.
Right.
I mean, this was a team that was getting gashed on the ground, and the number 1 running team in the NFL couldn't get anything going against them.
I learned a lot about the Chiefs defense, though. They did very good as well, and the Ravens really struggled in that first half, and then the second half, you saw them start to move the ball better. But as you mentioned, not on the ground and not what we were used to seeing from them.
So, ho-hum, what do you know? It's the 4th AFC title in the last 5 years for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes with his 14th playoff win. He becomes the 3rd most playoff wins from a quarterback of all time. Joe Montana's got 16, and then way up in a different stratosphere, Tom Brady's got 35, and crunch the numbers. I'm not a math guy, I'm a numbers guy. Crunch the numbers. Patrick Mahomes, to get to that 35 wins that Tom Brady had reached in his playoff career, would have to win more than 1 playoff game, just almost 1.5 playoff games every year for the rest of his career until he's 43 to get that number. Now, if there's anybody in the history of the league that could get there, at least at this point, it is Patrick Mahomes with how early a start he had and how much success they've had year in and year out. But it's going to come to the point, we talked about this, I think, 2 weeks ago. The LeBron, Michael Jordan argument in basketball is shaking up to be very similar with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. One's got the accomplishments, one's got the stats. And I think with every year that passes, we're getting closer and closer to having that same argument with Mahomes and Brady. There's people that are already ready to anoint Patrick Mahomes as the greatest football player to ever don a helmet. That's about 3 sizes too big. But it just shows, and as a Tom Brady guy, I had to slip this in there, just how remarkable it was that Tom Brady was able to not only get to the playoffs that many times, but win that many games. But
well, so he won 3 this year, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean.
So far. Exactly.
So, I mean, win 3 per year. That kind of takes that 1.5 down a little bit. He could do it a little bit sooner, but that is wild. That's amazing that Tom Brady was able to do that. And I think they are very similar in a sense of the teams that they have led to this spot.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the best and the worst, and they still find a way. Like this one right here, clearly the best defense that Kansas City has had, but offense, you can't say that. And Travis Kelce stepped up in a huge way the last 2 weeks as well for playoffs. So yeah, it's a dynamic duo. It'll be interesting, but you are correct. That conversation is getting nearer and nearer.
Year by year. Patriots are grabbing their collar every year as the Chiefs continue to win. 17-10 final puts the Chiefs in the Super Bowl for the 4th time in the last 5 years. And I was interested to see not only the betting numbers on the late game, Lions 49ers, but also the viewership numbers. I got this number right before we took the air. That game had 56 million viewers, which was the most watched telecast in the NFL since last year's Super Bowl. It's also the 4th highest non-Super Bowl broadcast in the history of the Fox network. So people were ready. They saw a boring, low-scoring first game that put a team that a lot did not want to get to the Super Bowl in, and they said, all right, we're gonna tune in and see if the Lions, the team of destiny, as a lot of people like to call them, can pull it off against the 49ers. But we talked about it, in this game notwithstanding, the Lions are built for long-term success more so than a lot of these other teams like a Houston or some of these other teams like a Green Bay that had real flash in the pan type of year.
I don't know if I would say compare it to Green Bay completely, because I do think they have a chance too. They're very young as well, but the Lions did prove themselves, and with Gibbs, Laporta, I mean, Dan Campbell built a very good team right here, and I think they can move forward. But I don't disagree with his comments, and I really appreciate how real he was with his team when he said this might have been our one shot, and then he went on to say, do I believe that? No. Do I? But it's being realistic, and if that were me, that would definitely motivate me more than saying, oh, you guys did a great job, we'll be back next year. You know, it was very real, and it was like, it's very hard to win in this league. I don't want to completely break your hearts, but this was a huge opportunity that we let slip away. So if we get it back next year, remember this feeling kind of thing.
Well, if there's one thing that Dan Campbell is going to give you, it's honesty. He's about as real a person as I could imagine on this earth. He'll tell you exactly how he's feeling. And the big storyline in this game were the 2 4th-down conversions attempted by the Lions in the second half. Both of them in field goal range, neither of them successful. And I don't know where you necessarily stand on this, but it was really interesting to see kind of the back and forth on social media. Some people say the numbers say this. I tend to think more that's who they were and what they did the entirety of the season. And I don't think you can go away from that just because it's the playoff time. And I really liked what Dan Campbell had to say in his press conference after the game, where he talked about the decision to go for it on 4th down both times. Take a listen.
Yeah, I just felt really good about us converting and getting our momentum and not letting them play long ball. They were bleeding the clock out. That's what they do. And I wanted to get the upper hand back, and it's easy hindsight, and I get it, I get that. But I don't regret those decisions, and that's hard. It's hard because, we didn't come through. It wasn't able to work out, but I don't.
I mean, that's about as heartbroken as I've ever seen Dan Campbell. And again, he'll tell you like it is. And I like that he owned up to it. He said, I know I'm going to get all the flack. I know it's all going to fall back on me, but I like the chances. And again, it's consistent with what they've done all year.
See, after the first one, then you have another opportunity and you can tie it up again after you fall behind. That's when you got to kick it and you got to take any points you can. And I understand what you're saying. I mean, don't go away from who you are and what you've done all year. But this isn't just a regular season game. You don't have another one next Sunday if things don't go right. So you have to kind of adjust and, make decisions based off of that.
49ers.
It's tough. It's tough.
Big time comeback win, which is something that we haven't been able to say about the 49ers really until the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
34-31 final. 17-point comeback is the biggest in conference championship game history.
It's pretty impressive.
I couldn't believe that nobody had come back from that at all, let alone in the second half.
Right, because we've seen it in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest in the conference championship. So, I was surprised by that as well.
The 49ers, turns out they can complete a late-game comeback. That was the storyline behind Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy all year, was that all their losses, they were trailing heading into the second half and were not able to come back and mount the comeback victory. But we've seen it now back-to-back weeks against two very strong, two very motivated, and two very NFC North teams in Green Bay and Detroit. I don't know if there's a single guy who has turned around the personal narrative more than anybody in the league than Brock Purdy. I mean, he went from being, this guy stinks, it's the coach, it's the scheme, it's the players around him. He just finds ways to win.
I know, but there's still so much hate around him. And even going into that game, people were still talking about him, and they were like, he's the worst of the four quarterbacks between these four teams. And it's just like, why are we even talking about that? He's got them to this point, right? And then he goes out there and, I mean, he did prove a lot of haters wrong again. Like you said, he just keeps winning. But yeah, it's a little unfair how much is.
And I don't think he stinks. I mean, he is a game manager. Alex Smith was having some fun on social media.
Yes, he was.
Saying that he is denied access to the game manager club because he's more than that. But like, it's one of those things. Do we know if Brock Purdy's, I mean, this sounds blasphemous, he's in the Super Bowl. Do we know if he's still any good? And this is, I defend Brock Purdy more than a lot of other folks because I'm fine with a game manager. And when they say he was the worst of the four quarterbacks, that's because every other quarterback had either won an MVP or been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
If you count, Jared Goff. And Goff was fine. Jared Goff did not lose this game for the Lions.
No, he
it
did
was
not.
all in the defense, which, granted, we and everybody else in our industry had been saying, if the Lions lose this game, it's because of their defense. I just think that this game, some higher power playing a cruel trick on the city of Detroit, but it came down to what everybody thought it was going to come down to.
You are 100% right. We've been saying that they've been outgained. Their defense, we've seen the holes, especially late down the stretch here, but came back to haunt them. I have a question for you. What do you think about Jimmy Garoppolo? Does this not feel all too similar when we just saw these two in 2019? They played the Super Bowl in 2020, and it was Jimmy Garoppolo that was leading this team. And when we got to this point, we still kind of were asking ourselves, how good is Jimmy G?
Exactly. But I think a lot of the credit needs to go to Kyle Shanahan. Obviously
100%.
Does for his schematics and the talent that they've built around him. Remember, this George Kittle might as well have not even stepped on the field. He did not make much of an impact in this game at all. I think that they're going to turn him loose in the Super Bowl way too early to give out numbers or anything. But I like Kittle over props. We are going to take a look tomorrow on the show at a lot of the opening lines for these Super Bowl props, but that's a very good comparison. And it's apples to apples. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, and they played the Chiefs.
They have a very similar game,
yes.
Garoppolo and Purdy do, but I don't think as individuals, you could have any two different guys. Garoppolo is a GQ model, and Brock Purdy has a roommate. That's all you need there. But so here we are. After the conference championship games, we've got our Super Bowl matchup in 2 weeks. 49ers opened most places at either 2 or 2.5.
Right.
It's now down to 1, although Vinny just told us it did go back up to 1.5 thanks to the better X with a lot of those big tickets there. It's the 15th straight Super Bowl, Alex, where the spread has been 4 points or less.
Okay.
And that's a huge, huge, huge departure historically. This is a number that I found from 1991 to 2006. The Super Bowl featured a spread bigger than 4 points 12 out of those 16 years.
Wow.
And it was basically the 07 Super Bowl on is where we kind of saw that start to flip.
Okay.
And I think that tells us that the NFL as a whole has developed so much more parity. It's not just these dominant teams running their way through the regular season and the playoffs. We're starting to see that A, everyone is kind of closer to each other than we think, and B, it is a lot harder than ever to get to this point.
You make great points. And what do you think about yesterday? We had two great games. I mean, they were completely different, and you kind of mentioned it with the viewership, but that first one, defensive battle, even though we had two of the best quarterbacks in that game, defenses really showed up. And then the late one was such a good game. How many lead changes did we see throughout that game with these two? So, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's different. I can't believe it's that many in a row under 4. It's pretty incredible. And this one's about a pick.
Yeah, it's definitely moving that way, especially if we can get some more of these big tickets coming through. Another note that I found was that this is the 4th Super Bowl ever where it's a rematch of head coaches with the same teams.
Okay.
In the past, it was Tom Landry and Chuck Noll, Jimmy Johnson and Marv Levy, and then Tom Coughlin and Bill Belichick in both the Patriots-Giants Super Bowls. Andy Reid got the better of Kyle Shanahan a couple years ago. In the instances where there's a rematch, the coach that won the first game has swept the second game.
Wow.
There's never been a head coach that has coached against a team and a head coach that they've previously faced in the Super Bowl that's been able to come back and win. So if you like the Chiefs, that bodes well for you.
Wow. Yes, I was waiting to see where you were going to go with that. I was not expecting it to be that they swept and won both of them.
To be honest with you, it's almost like the narrative in college basketball or even in the NFL with divisional games. Like, it's hard to beat the same team 2 to 3 times in a year. It is hard to beat a team that has beaten you, especially in a stage like this where they've got the game plan, and both teams have remarkably similar rosters. Chiefs have a little bit more difference on the defense, but remarkably similar for both of these teams from where they were a couple years ago.
It's funny how things can flip around so quickly. Like, I had the Niners potentially beating the Ravens in the Super Bowl. The Ravens embarrass them on Christmas, and they get another chance here if it was that matchup. And now we get the Chiefs and the Niners, and I don't know what to do, especially because if you give Kansas City, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes 2 weeks to prepare for a game, you have to completely change how you're handicapping this game.
It's certainly a lot to be said about these two teams, about this matchup, and I'll be really interested to see where this number on the game moves. The total, I don't think that moves a ton, but I think that the spread and the action is going to go back and forth. We got our guest Lou Finocchiaro on in about 10 minutes, but before we bring Lou on, we wanted to have some fun with halftime show props. We're talking props. We'll get into props on the game tomorrow on the show, but we're talking halftime props, and it's Vegas. It is the entertainment, now the sports and entertainment capital of the world.
That's
the LVCVA has pivoted. We are the sports and entertainment capital of the world here in Las Vegas. Usher, who has a residency at Caesar's Palace nearby, and he is performing. It's going to be, I think, visually a striking show.
Absolutely.
And in our prep for this, I hope you realize that I love these halftime shows. I love the performances. I love the regalia that comes with it, and I'm a big music guy, so this is a big kind of betting market in a lot of offshore. Keep in mind, you cannot bet these in Nevada. They don't offer entertainment props at all or in the Super Bowl. But these are all offshore for now. Some states eventually will open them up with some of the bigger markets, but you cannot bet these in Nevada. That is our disclaimer ahead of time. And you never will with the way the Gaming Commission is, for better or worse. But the first one we're going to take a look at, keep in mind, it's Usher. Think of your favorite Usher songs. First one is, how many songs will be performed in total? Now, this is for the whole show. Total set at 8.5. I've got a stat for this, as I do for most things. Your initial thoughts on the number of songs, because I certainly had an idea as soon as I saw this number.
I would have to go over this because, I mean, Usher has a lot of #1 hits. He's had a lot of songs throughout his career, so I would lean to the over.
And I did too. And we looked it up. Last year, Rihanna, which was the biggest, most viewed halftime show ever, keep in mind it was just her. There were no collaborations, which is kind of where we'll go here in a minute. It was all Rihanna. She did 11 songs total, and it was in 13 minutes. They went rapid fire through them. But if you look at the set list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts of. So she got through 11 songs and parts of 7 others.
That's impressive.
So she was flying.
So I'm glad that you said, I don't think you know this, I love these halftime shows. Well, you impressed me right away when we were kind of talking about this. And I said, I think I'm the only person that liked the Rihanna halftime show. And you go, what do you mean? I loved it. So
they let her executive
I would
produce
like
it.
to know what everybody behind the glass thought too, because it was very mixed last year with Rihanna's halftime show.
We'll ask our director, Ann, because she's got the mic back there. Your thoughts on the Rihanna Super Bowl halftime show last year?
I'm going to say I don't remember it very well. That was the whole thing. It was about her, oh, is she now revealing that she's pregnant? That was the big thing too with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So no,
Not her favorite.
It didn't stick with me.
And I think that
Jerry?
we're of the age where Rihanna kind of got really big as we reached our teenage years and into college. So she was always just kind of playing in the background. And I have always liked Rihanna.
Yep.
And I was very surprised she didn't do any collaborations. So I'm interested to see. Our next one is the total number of songs with collaborations. Now, this is other artists other than Usher on the stage with him. It's over under 2.5. And I think with the fact that there were 0 last year, they let Rihanna executive produce the whole thing, and she did all of her own songs because she's got such a ridiculous catalog. I say there's no way that this goes under 2.5. There's going to be 3 other people performing with him at some point, right?
I love it. It's Las Vegas. Why wouldn't you bring as many people in as you could to really do a big show, especially first time here in Vegas? So I'm with you. I think over 2.5. I think Jerry's shaking his head yes. He likes it too.
Yeah, Jerry's our music expert in the back, the best musician we got in the stage here. What do you think? Over or under, Jerry? Over. He says
Yeah.
over 2.5. I agree. Well, that leads us right into our next one, is the odds to appear on stage with Usher and performing. And yeah, it's a long list. I had to leave some of them off when I made this graphic, but a couple stood out to me right away. Alicia Keys and Ludacris at minus money, deservedly so. They're going to be there. They've done enough songs with Usher. Alicia Keys has executive produced some of his albums.
Okay.
There's no way they're not there. The one that surprises me, and if you're in one of these offshore markets where you can get this, Lil Jon at plus 105, a Las Vegas resident, on Usher's biggest song ever, Yeah. If you can get Lil Jon at plus money, and these are the important handicaps, folks. If you can get Lil Jon at plus money, there's no way that he doesn't perform with him, right?
I don't hate that at all. But what about will.i.am? Because we were looking up. I said Usher's done a halftime, but I believe it was Black Eyed Peas, and Usher was on their halftime performance. So why not bring him in as well?
Just return the favor, right?
That's right.
Well, will.i.am is plus 210, and if
Okay.
they don't do OMG, we riot. I love that song.
We riot with the whole studio.
Last one that we'll look at, and then we'll take a break and bring in our good friend Lou Finicaro, is the first song to be performed. First song that Usher performs. And it's interesting to me, the order and how it's changed. There, believe it or not, there are number moves
Okay.
on the offshore markets for this first song prop. Right now, Love in the Club and OMG are 3-1. I'm going to put my money, if I could, on OMG. I think that the beginning of that song is great. Yeah, at 5-1. That one will be performed early on. It opened as a plus 225 favorite in this offshore market that I found, and then moved to 5-1.
That is crazy. So that means more money's coming in. I'm going to be honest with you. I've never picked the right first song, so I don't even know where to go with this.
I'm
Because
gonna
I'm looking
say-
at Burn, but that might just be what I want them
You
to play
gotta think of
first.
the first like 10 seconds of the song and how you would
Right?
come out to it. My
It's
dark
tough.
horse pick in this one,
Yeah.
DJ Got Us Falling in Love.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Get that at 5-1. It's got a great high energy intro, and yeah, just a couple of look at some early Super Bowl
it's
halftime
fun.
props.
I love
and,
this stuff too.
And again, you will not be able to find these at all in Nevada. It is all offshore markets for now, but I thought that would be a fun way to kind of transition into the Super Bowl preview.
So what about like the coin toss and any of those kind of props? Do you like those as well?
I do. Coin toss is one that you can bet in Nevada.
Yes, you can.
It's basically anything that can or cannot be influenced by a producer. That was the way that I was taught to think about it. Like Taylor Swift, how many times are they going to show Taylor Swift?
Right.
Can't bet that in Nevada because it is influenced by a producer and someone's personal choice. Coin toss is close to 50-50 as it gets in the world.
Yes, it is.
So I do like some of those. I don't normally play a ton of them.
Yeah.
And then all the pregame fun ones, all the Gatorade, all the whatever. Those are fun, but more so in like a social setting.
Right.
You know, pick 'em pool or whatever
Absolutely.
with their group of friends. But yeah, Super Bowl 58. Believe it.
I can't. And it's here
And
in
it's
Las Vegas.
Right
and
down the road.
we'll get to do a lot of things covering it and bring it to everybody who watches our show.
South Point's going to have some great coverage. Stay tuned to our social medias where we will announce that over the next coming days. So that's our look at the NFC and AFC championship games, an early look at the Super Bowl right down the road at Allegiant Stadium, about 10 minutes down the road from us?
Yep. I
Pretty
think
close.
Frank
We'll
said 6 miles.
6 miles, that's all. We could walk that. We got to get started. We'll take a break. When we come back, our good friend Lou Finicaro joins to give his thoughts on the conference championship games and the big game, and we'll take a look at an NHL betting model as we get towards the end of the regular season. Don't go anywhere. Back in 120 seconds on Sports by the Book.
South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rock and dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grandview Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show, every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grandview Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grandview Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
We're back here on Sports by the Book. She's Alex White. I'm Matt Neverett. We got a full crew behind the glass today, too, Alex. We got Caden, Jerry, Ann, and the Drew Dog. We got a full crew back there, and we appreciate their work trying to make us look and sound good. And joining us now, great friend of mine and a great handicapper of multiple different sports. It's Lou Finicaro at Gamblu on Twitter, gamblu.com. Lou, great to see you again, my friend, and thanks so much for joining us here on South Point Studios.
Matt and Alex, I'm tickled to be here with you, share a few insights on what was and maybe what will be. So I'm looking forward to, a little give and take this afternoon.
Yeah, and speaking of what was, I want to get started because if people go and check out your Twitter profile at Gamblu, you had some really strong thoughts. You had no holds barred against the Ravens yesterday. You said that Chiefs first half, which was a bet that you had at plus 3.5, was like stealing money. That was the word or the phrasing that you had used. That was one that you had locked in early in the week. You were all over it. I'm with you, Lou, on the Ravens from a play calling perspective. What were your thoughts on that game?
Well, I do want to disclose that the Chiefs plus 3.5. I said it was like stealing after the gamble was made and won. I'll be honest with you. I was tempted to try the middle with the Raven money line and the Chiefs plus 3.5. At the time, it was just 3. When I saw the 3.5, everything fell by the wayside, and I just stuck with the one side. Mahomes with the 3.5. I've been skeptical about Lamar only because in past opportunities, he has just not been able to rise to the occasion. And yesterday, I'm not going to hang it all on him. I really believe Coach Monken got his fingers caught in the meat grinder a little bit by trying to do and create an offense that is not to the personality of the Ravens. We saw the Ravens go into San Francisco some weeks ago and use Gus Edwards and a couple other running backs and pound the ball and really create a great mystique for the Ravens. But yet, when they get to Kansas City, a team with a 27th ranked DVOA rush defense, they threw it all out the window and tried to create a pocket passer out of a guy in Lamar that I don't think is totally comfortable in that realm. Then the bully got a little tight, and we started to see him crack a little bit in the form of those 15-yard penalties. They were the Ravens penalized 8 for 95 yards against the Chiefs, 3 for 30. Composure and leadership means so much at this stage of the NFL, and I just think the difference in the game was Kansas City's leadership and composure.
I agree with you 100%. So where does that lead us now? Was that more on the Ravens and their lack of composure and preparation for this Chiefs team, or is it the Chiefs? Have the Chiefs turned a new leaf, and can we believe in them going to the Super Bowl and winning this?
Well, that's a great question. And the way that I'm going to try and address that, Alex, is that it depends on San Francisco. I don't believe Shanahan's going to change who he is. And I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Christian McCaffrey, maybe even Eli Mitchell and Deebo Samuel. They will absolutely address and attack that rush defense. And it'll be up to Kansas City to prove that their defense is what we just saw as well. if San Francisco can get the lead and maybe put a little pressure on Kansas City, then we might see that Kansas City offense of week 13, 14, et cetera, creep back into our TV sets.
Yeah, and the Chiefs never really were pressured once they took the lead. They were in control, even though the final score was within a touchdown. They were in control the whole time. Their drives in the second half, by the way, I didn't realize this until after the game. 5 punts at the end of the game.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do anything in
No.
the second half, and the Ravens wilted like a flower. And I think that, to your question that you asked Lou earlier, I think that says a lot more about the Ravens, and like you had said, Lou, about their play calling. They had 11 designed runs in the game, 6 of them to running backs. And I know Lamar Jackson's the best running quarterback in the NFL, but you said it, Lou. They tried to make him a pocket passer, and it came back to bite them. But I think there's a lot that needs to be said as well about the consistency and what we've seen Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes develop, to your point, from a leadership perspective. They're the closest thing to a dynasty at the Patriots level that we've seen, and they're back in the Super Bowl after their 4th AFC title game win in the last 5 years. Lou, want to get your thoughts on the late game as well. We had Vinny and Jimmy on early. They talked about how the handle on the late game was more than the early game. There were more people that watched it on TV, and it ended up being a better, more fun game to watch. The Lions covered every number. The total went way over. What were your thoughts on that one? Because you weren't as aggressive on social media with either team in this game.
In that first game, Matt, I stood to gain way more with a Raven win than the Chief win, though I had futures on each side. In the second game, I was all San Francisco, and I was vocal that San Francisco was going to be able to handle Detroit, and I couldn't have been more incorrect. These games are very, very interesting. We saw Detroit give Kansas City their first loss of the season early in the year, and so it's all about matchups, and I really got that one incorrect. I got lucky with the fact that San Francisco was able to right the ship at halftime and come back. I can't hold anything against Coach Campbell for being exactly who he was all year long. But I think that when it comes to analytics, there isn't a blanket that we can throw over a situation and call it, this is what you do. It comes down to this situation on this week at this particular time and at this juncture of the game. And in this particular case, there were a couple of, I don't want to say mistakes, but I think that Coach Campbell, savvy as he is all season long, made a couple of errors. Number one, not taking a late field goal. Number two, with the timeout.
I know it's way too early to ask for picks just yet, but I mean, you broke down a lot there for us. Looking at the Niners now, this is 2 weeks in a row that we've seen them come out kind of flat and get shut down in the first half. So we have 2 weeks to prepare, and you brought up a lot of respect for Shanahan, and I think we all have respect for him as well. But so what do the Niners have to do to win this game? And again, it's way too early to get your picks. We'll have you on again to talk side and total in this game. But any thoughts already for the Super Bowl looking at the Niners side?
Yes, Alex, my thoughts are this: respect the bookmaker. Why did they come out with 2.5 and then the Hordes immediately take it down to 1? So I tend to respect my bookmaker. I tend to lean to San Francisco in this game because I don't believe they're going to throw out their identity. And I believe we're going to see them attack the underbelly, the soft side of the Chief team, which is rush defense. And for that matter, right now, I think that it's a bargain on San Francisco at a pick or -1, 1.5.
Still plenty more to come as we preview Super Bowl 58, and we'll have plenty of coverage here at South Point Studios. Stay tuned to our social media, and we'll tell you all the fun, exciting stuff that we're going to do. He's Lou Finicaro, joining us here to not only talk Super Bowl, but some hockey as well. We're getting into the second half, almost the NHL All-Star break here. Their All-Star game's a little bit later, but wanted to get your thoughts. I understand that you look at the regular season for NHL from a betting perspective, but you're not big in terms of betting day-to-day sides, totals, puck lines. You use it as a data modeling source for the playoffs, and I understand the reason is because the game changes so drastically from the regular season to the hockey playoffs, which, in my opinion, is the best of all the 4 major sports in terms of the intensity in the playoffs. So my question for you right off the bat, twofold, Lou. A, how do you take a look at the regular season when you come to the playoffs? And B, what makes playoffs hockey so much different in the NHL?
Well, those are two great questions. And the first, A, will be that after 82 games of data, I think for anyone that's really paying attention, it's hard to make mistakes. It's hard to show something that one is not after 82 games of data. And so for that reason, I like to compile the regular season for data only. That's not to say that in these last couple months after the All-Star break, I'll lay out a position here and there. I think I have one for Tuesday the 6th when Edmonton comes to their arch rival Las Vegas, as a matter of fact. So to answer A, I'd love to use the data to create my model, and my model then becomes the answer to B, and that is the season that is the Stanley Cup playoff season, that 6 to 9 weeks, is so drastically different than its regular season that I regard these two seasons as completely different sports. And a case in point will be a team like Boston. And here's a team in Boston that has a great defensive-minded team, but when you look at the standings, you see that they've lost 9 overtime games. Well, overtime is 3-on-3. Let's tap each other on the rear end and play a bunch of wide open space offensive hockey. And that is not what the playoffs are. There's no room on the ice in playoff hockey. There's no 3-on-3 unless you have some form of melee that doesn't happen anymore. And consequently, the fact that we play until they finish in playoff hockey makes that season completely different. And I get the fact that if Florida's playing Ottawa and in 2 nights, Ottawa has to go to Boston and the next night, Florida has to go to LA, they can't play triple overtime. I totally get that. But the game changes from an offensive game in the regular season to a game that's played from the goal out in the postseason. And that's exactly how I handicap it. I look at a team like the LA Kings. They're a team a little bit struggling with goaltenders, but they play great defensive hockey, and they've lost 10 overtime games. Does that mean they're no good for the playoff season? No, they're designed perfectly for it, but they're not designed to play 3-on-3 hockey with the Edmontons and the Torontos and the Floridas.
That is great info. Okay, so when you say model, is this like a power rating? Are you updating the teams every night after the games?
No, I do not watch it that closely because NHL.com can do all of that for me. What I do, Alex, is once the regular season and those 82 games are over, I then compile I'll call it a model, but an old saddle like me, it's really an Excel file that tracks the important components that I want to track. Shots against, face-offs won, goaltender goal against, and save percentage. These are the things that have been available to me for 20, 30, 40 years. I've used them effectively, and I don't want to change now in lieu of the fact that there are all kinds of new terms and new ways to look at hockey. It's still the exact same game that I grew up watching when Bobby Orr and the Bruins were facing the Mahavlich boys in Montreal.
Just less guys going full airborne, vertical or horizontally in the air than the Bobby Orr days, right?
Well, they did it then. He kind of changed things. He was the prototypical new defenseman that now we see all over the NHL.
Would love to get your thoughts on some of these futures as well. How much does your original thoughts on the NHL playoff kind of go along with how this futures market is right now in the NHL?
Yes, I was looking at that to prepare for the show. Plus, this is the time of year where the NFL gets put aside, and besides the UFC, I focus completely on the NHL. And there's a couple of things that I would look for at this point in time for a future candidate. I need coaching. I really need a team that's been there, meaning in the playoffs last year. I don't need it, but I strive for that. So a team like Vancouver, effective as they've been this year, may not be a team that I end up relying on. Rather, I'm looking at a team like Florida. I'm looking at a team like Boston. Unimaginative, but those are both 10-1 teams. On the Western side, in the Campbell, it's right under my nose, I think. I look for the Vegas Golden Knights. This is a team, has a couple of really strong goaltenders. Hill's playing great. They got Marchessault, last year's MVP. They're the defending champion. They got a great coach. And I think that we'll see them at the other side of this All-Star break get a chance at a playoff-type game when Edmonton comes to town. That will be as close to a playoff-style atmosphere as we can get in the regular season. I'm sure that will be maybe a pick'em. Perhaps Vegas comes a little bit of a favorite, but make no mistake about it. The Golden Knights are in no hurry to let Edmonton come and break a record on their ice.
So you're leaning towards the Knights in that one, Lou?
Oh, I'm dying. I'm salivating to wait to see what the line is because I'm going to bet them. And if Edmonton does happen to get by those Golden Knights, I'll come right back with Phoenix the following game, because then the emotion from Edmonton will be what a relief, and maybe I catch them as a big dog with Phoenix.
I've been following hockey for the last few years, and I make my own numbers. I think you might be getting a little plus money with the Knights next week because of this streak that Edmonton has been on and this win streak, and their power rating has gone up quite a bit there. But I love all the information you gave. I'm very excited because the last few years I've found myself do phenomenal in round one of hockey and then just feel like I kind of lose it as it goes on. So I'm going to use some of your tips and make sure to incorporate that this year for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I'll share everything that I can. I miss as many as I win. However, when you're betting dogs, 50% can actually return a very, very sound ROI.
That's why you're one of the best. He is Lou Finicaro at Gamblue on Twitter, gamblue.com. First time joining us here on this show. Lou, you were amazing as always, and I can't wait to have you back on soon.
Thanks so much for having me. Keep up with the great work. You guys are both brilliant young handicappers. Keep up the great work.
I appreciate it, Lou.
Thank you so much, Lou.
That's just his opinion. No, Lou Finicaro, one of the best, and was wanting to get his thoughts on some UFC, but there really isn't a big card coming up until UFC 300. So we'll certainly have him on to handicap some MMA. That is where he makes his hay. He is great at UFC, MMA, but UFC specifically. And he's one of my oldest sports betting media folks that I've been in contact with.
We forgot about Waste Management too. So this is good. He said that he likes dogs. He looks for them in the playoffs for hockey. UFC is a great sport where you can get some plus money, and
he kills it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to start having him on as a guest.
Next time we have Lou on, it's got to be before February 8th because the Waste Management Open is in Phoenix, where he's from. Want to get his thoughts not only on the handicap for that, but just his thoughts on the event as a whole. That's the number one golf tournament outside of the Masters that I would absolutely love to go to. I think I'm going to make it not this year, but potentially next year.
I think it's on everybody's bucket list. If it's not, it should be for sure. Just
a couple minutes left in the show. We're going to close things out with a quick look at a very light slate in college basketball tonight. Alex and I each have at least one play, which is kind of surprising considering how paltry the market is. The one game that we don't have a play on, 881, 882 on the betting sheets. Number 12, Duke laying 3 at Virginia Tech. That game coming up in just over a minute. Duke laying the 3. I would take it, but Duke's just been so inconsistent, and especially on the road in the ACC, which is down as a whole, but weirdly competitive as a conference this year. That's a total stay away for me. The one that you and I both have, it's an official play for me. Are you in on this one?
I'm in.
We're in. Okay, squad ride. We're going with the Houston Cougars, baby. Ken Palm's number 1 rated team. They're number 4 in the polls. They're laying 5 at Texas. That's a rivalry game that starts at 6 here on the West Coast on ESPN. I love Houston. They're 18-2. Both of those losses in the Big 12, but got to remember the strength of the Big 12 overall. My big thing for this one is the defense of Houston, and that has been the key all year. Number 1 overall in Ken Palm, number 1 in adjusted defense. Texas, number 73 in adjusted defense, and number 36 overall. And For those of you that use Haslametrics, he's got it projected as a 10-point Houston win. So that notwithstanding, I like the Cougars and Kelvin Sampson's team tonight.
It's scary when you have to lay points and they're on the road in college basketball because we know how much that home court does mean. But I like Houston here as well. I have Texas as like the 9th best team in the Big 12. So out of 14, it's not great. Houston, of course, number 1. I think they're about 10 points better than Texas.
Texas 14-6 on the year, 3-4 in the Big 12. So it's a buzzsaw this year in the Big 12 as it has been recently. And Texas has been getting the worst of that so far. And we each have one obscure play in the write-in games. You and I each have one. I'll allow you to go first. Ladies
Okay,
first.
so I am on the under here in NC Central and Delaware State, under 135. Both of these teams are very good defensively, not so great offensively. I say very good. They're about 201 adjusted defense. That is Central there, but they are second best defense in their conference, and then Delaware State is the best defense in that conference. Both teams are 4-0 to the under in their last 4 games, which were conference games. So I like these two. Good defensive battle. 135 is too high.
Numbers bode well, and you said both of those teams have gone under in each of their last 4?
Yes, they have.
So as of late, that has been the trend as well. And then my obscure play, Morgan State at Norfolk State. I'm going to lay 12.5 with the Spartans at home. Norfolk State, that game actually opened at 12.5. It's now closer to 13.5. I got this one last night when the opening numbers came out. So if you can get anywhere near 13, I still like it. Morgan State, number 346 out of 362 in KenPom. Meanwhile, Norfolk State really dominant, especially against this Morgan State team. Norfolk State 13-8. They're 3-1 in the MEAC. Haslametrics has this one as a 16-point Norfolk State win. So I like this one up to 14, but if you can get it anywhere close to 13, I got 12.5 last night. We'll take it with the Spartans. We're going MEAC. Those write-in numbers, by the way, 306, 637, 306, 638. Not normally how far down the board we go, but it's a small slate tonight. That'll do it for us here on Sports by the Book. Got to get in those obscure plays at the end, right?
There's a lot of NBA games we didn't get to today, but we'll have a lot of NBA talk tomorrow. We'll have Steve Jones on, who is a former UNLV basketball player.
Just did a podcast with JJ Redick. So go and check that one out. He'll join us tomorrow. We'll also talk NBA All-Star Game starters.
Yes.
I think it is important. There's a lot of bettable markets, and they're going back to the East-West format, which is fine by me. I didn't like the draft. I think the East-West format is way better. So we'll get to that tomorrow. A jam-packed show today. Glad we got everything in there. Thanks to Vinny Maiulo. Thanks to Jimmy Vaccaro. Thanks to Lou Finicaro. And for Alex White, I'm Matt Neverett. Big thanks to everybody behind the glass. That'll do it for Sports by the Book. Back at it tomorrow, 3 o'clock here on the West Coast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to South Point Studios on YouTube as well. And until then, we bid you adieu.